last 10 years, earthquakes, heat waves, floods, hurricanes and fires have all been on the increase. Our homes are where we look for shelter, but when disaster strikes, we're on the front line.
Disasters are not natural. Nature provides events, but we provide the vulnerabilities that take a natural event and make it into a disaster, or worse, a catastrophe.
If you think your house is safe, think again.
Building codes are critically important to life safety and property protection.
The public, they need to be asking these questions of the builder. Why won't you build me a home that will survive?
It's either pay a little more now or pay a hell of a lot more later.
Is your home built to last? The Carolina-based Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, or IBHS, want to make our properties stronger and safer.
Most people just assume that they've bought a house, therefore it must be well built, or somebody wouldn't be able to sell it to them, much like you can't sell milk if it's past the expiration date. It simply isn't true. The average American home, unfortunately, is pretty brittle. And by that I mean it's not designed to be resilient, and that the building code itself is really a minimum. So when people brag about their house being built to code, it's really nothing to brag about.
On May the 20th, 2013, a Force 5 tornado struck the small town of Moore, Oklahoma. In just 2 hours, winds of up to 200 miles an hour ripped through the city, killing 24 people and destroying over 1,000 homes. The town's building codes were woefully inadequate. So Moore raised its wind design standard from 90 to 135 miles an hour, becoming the first municipality to have a tornado category code. But the downside, a typical house costs up to $5,000 more.
People buy a house, they look at a house, they look at the crown molding and the granite countertops. It's got a copper farm sink and faucet and a cool fireplace and wood floors. They don't ask a question about how's it built. Does it have hurricane clips on every rafter? Or how much lumber does it have in the roof? What kind of garage door does it have? You know, I've told realtors, you know, that you need to do a better job selling. You've got a better home here. Tell them about the $3,000 to $5,000 worth of extra material that's in this home that's going to save your personal belongings.
And testing proves that the money is well spent. In a 90-mile-an-hour wind, a traditionally built American house collapses all too easily. IBHS Chief Engineer Tim Reingold explains the roof is the most vulnerable part of the house.
When the wind's blowing around the building, it's trying to lift that roof up, it's trying to push that house over and tip it over as well. The stuff that's colored pink are the things that we would typically be looking for people to do to strengthen the connection between the roof and the walls and the wall and the foundation. And so when you look at those things, you're trying to connect the roof to the wall, and so you'll see these big metal straps up here that are hurricane type straps, but they tie the truss to the top of the wall.
These are two identical houses, but only one has been strengthened. How will they fare against a 90-mile-an-hour wind, the lowest hurricane category? The result is clear.
The typical cost to do the additional connections, to put the metal in there and do it right, is about 1% of the cost of a house.
With no federal building codes in America, it is up to local authorities to set codes and ensure enforcement. Here in Alabama, some coastal communities know existing codes are too weak. they've introduced a voluntary building standard, Fortified, deemed by the IBHS to be tougher than Alabama's building codes.
This particular house has shingles on it, but these shingles are specifically high wind rated, so that when the storm blows and the wind and the rain are coming at this house, these shingles are actually much more likely to stay in place. That's absolutely the basis of the Fortified, is making sure you get the roof right first. This roof system is actually tied to the walls at the top of the wall there to that top plate. That top plate is then tied directly to the studs that make up the wall, and then at the bottom we have the sill plate is actually tied directly to the concrete foundation with anchor bolts.
New house buyers can choose Fortified, but what about existing homes?
A lot of local and state governments, other private groups have come up with tools for homeowners to build homes better and retrofit homes. Alabama has a Fortified program where they provide their mitigation dollars back to homeowners to go in and do some things like putting in reinforced windows and shutters and things that can reduce future damages.
Retrofitting your own home is now being put into practice throughout Alabama. Nathan Lippincott is a roofing engineer. He's on a mission to make homes stormproof across the state.
The roof is probably the most vulnerable part of the home. You have a lot of leakage, and you have sheetrock damage and cabinet damage and flooring damage. So it costs a lot of money to repair your house. With a bronze fortified roof, we're going to keep that, it's called a sealed roof deck. And our job is to keep that water out of the house during a storm to where you may lose a couple shingles, but we still keep the water out of the house during a hurricane.
Homes are still being built that fail to meet the strongest Fortified standard. But increasingly, homeowners are realizing that the small extra cost is worthwhile. Having a strong garage door can mean the difference between surviving a storm or losing a home.
This door has a beam for each section of the garage door, and they're oversized beams to help keep it from being pushed in by the wind.
Yeah, exactly.
Because once the door starts bending in, it just completely
door
tears
fails,
away, and it
wind
comes
gets
away
inside,
from the wall.
pressurizes your house,
Yeah.
and off comes the roof.
New build homes can use construction methods able to withstand wind speeds of 135 miles an hour or more.
This is known as insulated concrete form, or ICF construction, and what you do is you set your foundation, and then you set these forms on the exterior walls coming up with reinforcing steel that comes up vertically through it, and the entire wall structure going all the way up is poured solid with concrete. And this not only provides the structural strength from the concrete and steel in the center, but the insulation properties for energy efficiency with your exterior forms. So it meets a lot of the needs of this area from an energy standpoint, from a structural standpoint, resilient construction. It gives pretty much everything you would be looking for.
For ultimate safety, poured concrete can create a house that will last for generations.
Cast-in-place concrete construction is the strongest. We put up forms, pour the concrete, take the forms away, have the rebar inside of the concrete. Makes a structure that I think is the strongest structure that you can make, and it's very durable, holds up to wind-driven rain and the elements and age and the termites. It's just it's the strongest way to build.
As climate change brings ever more extreme weather, threats are changing too. Wildfires are becoming more prevalent as drought increases.
Yeah, there he goes. Here's his drop. Those are the Santa Monica Mountains, and just beyond that is the city of Los Angeles. So you can see there's considerable threat, and that is our primary objective, is to protect lives and property. I've seen flame lengths upwards of 100 feet high. I've seen large areas go up almost spontaneously because they're so preheated. I've seen entire canyons go up in a matter of minutes. We've seen a big increase in fire activity, and not only that, but the frequency and intensity of the fires. I've been a fireman for 10 years now, and each year seems to get worse and worse as far as the intensity of the flames, the hazards that we face. We have prolonged droughts. Rain is our friend, so we're waiting for hopefully a good rainy season. But in the meantime, this is what we do. It's called job security.
In the face of these infernos, timber-built homes are simply fuel for the fire. Building homes with non-combustible materials, ensuring sprinkler systems are fitted and all insulation is fire resistant, can help mitigate against fire damage. For some though, fire is the least of their worries. In recent years, flooding in the US has claimed more lives and property loss than any other hazard. As the effects of climate change take hold, more and more people are at risk.
In 1970, the US population was 200 million. Current population is 325 million. All those people have to live somewhere, and they aren't necessarily going to be living in hazard-free or low-hazard areas.
The waters of Lake Houston, a reservoir to the northeast of the city, look calm today. But in August 2017, it saw 17 inches of rain in less than a day.
It was probably a few days prior to the storm making landfall that we received alerts and warnings to prepare for the hurricane. So I pretty much was preparing for a windstorm, and they told us we was going to have a substantial amount of rain, but I couldn't imagine the amount of rain that we received.
Many Americans don't realize they live in danger of being flooded. Audrey lived on the outskirts of Houston, 10 miles from the lake, but her home was devastated by floodwater.
I have no idea until now. If it's in a floodplain, I have no idea. And I've been living here 30 years, and it wasn't a place that flooded, so.
You guys ready to go back to work?
I'm ready.
Absolutely. All right.
Audrey was lucky. She was able to rebuild her home thanks to a charity set up to help disaster victims. Months after the floods, many houses are still derelict, their owners unable to afford repairs. Desperate for funds, some have had to sell at knockdown prices.
My first advice would be, regardless of whether they tell you it's a flood-prone area or not, make sure you have flood insurance. Believe me, from this day forward, Audrey will.
The Gulf Coast is one of the most hazard-prone areas in the USA. In recent years, Hurricanes Irma, Katrina and Matthew, to name just a few, have brought devastation. The nearer the coastline you build, the greater the force of the storm and the worse the potential damage. But there are solutions.
This home is elevated about 10 feet above ground level, and at the ground level, the tide could come in a storm, and during Ivan and Katrina, it was about this level here, but we did not take a direct impact from those storms. If it was a direct impact, it could be as high as the floor of this house. The house is bolted to the pilings, and it gets 6 stainless steel bolts going all the way through the substructure of the house that holds it to the pilings. So again, this engineered to meet or exceed all the winds that could be forced on this house here.
For total peace of mind, relocation to a safer area may be the only solution. But in most cases, that simply isn't a practical option. Miami's metro area has 5.5 million people living at sea level, at risk from storms and flooding. In 1992, Hurricane Andrew destroyed 60,000 homes, revealing just how badly constructed they were. South Florida rewrote its building codes, and now they are some of the toughest in the country. Now homes are being constructed of concrete, some are being elevated, and whole road systems are being constructed to improve drainage. Resilient homes, whether fortified or ICF or concrete, cost a little more to build. But they pay for themselves through enhanced resale value, reduced heating or cooling costs, and, being far safer, smaller insurance premiums. Changing the mindset of homeowners is key.
It would be a hard sell, I think, if the American buyer had to decide between nice trim and a home that could withstand a hurricane.
Right. We like bigger and better here in the States. And so I think for a lot of people, it's hard to give up that size. Personally now, I think it's worth going smaller and having the mental and the financial security. The joke in our neighborhood is they called us the neighborhood safe house. And they're like, we're coming to your house when a storm comes. And we're like, okay, just bring, bring beer and a cot and we'll have a party,
Don't wait for government. There are things that can be done from the household to the neighborhood level that will make bouncing back from a natural event much, much easier.
We cannot continue to use bailouts after disasters to make communities whole. We've got to start building resilient communities. Climate change is going to change and grow disaster risk in areas that may not have seen it before. Yes, we're seeing more disasters. Yes, the costs are going up. And much of that is because of the way we built and where we built. Can we do a better job? Absolutely. When's the time to act? Now. People need to quit depending upon bailouts to clean up the mess. Let's fix it on the front end.